US Army background, forging teams, chief officer, instructor. Now, how is your sort of lens, if you will, on leadership kind of developed? Because I always have a very romantic look when I think
Mm,
about people in the military. And people often speak about the fire department, the fire service as like a paramilitary service. But I think we're not doing it a full justice there because I think the leadership development that happens within the military and the army is
mhm.
significantly more intentional than what I see in our organizations. I don't know if you would agree, disagree, push back on that.
Yeah, I think one, that's a great question because um, the military does get romanced, and I would say
Hmm.
it just depends on what section of the military. And so, like, if you're going into like an infantry war unit,
Hmm.
it is certainly more emphasized because of the importance of it. Um, versus going into like a pogue unit, like whether you're going to be a cook or, you know, working in laundry and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's non-existent almost, and so
Yeah.
yeah, so I would say when it comes to the military, it certainly depends on, what your MOS is and what you're going to be doing for it.
How did you, how old were you when you transitioned out of that?
I was 20, I was just turning 22 years old.
Okay. So you were still quite young when you came out of the military.
Yeah, I joined when I was 18. I graduated high school when I was 17, so I kind of had like a jump start
Hmm.
on everything. And so
What
yeah,
initially drew you into it, and then why the move? It might be a personal reason, so I apologize if it is.
no, not a personal reason. Actually, it was like um, I'll tell you a short story basically, and that
Mhm.
was I was going through all the prerequisites to become a firefighter. And so like I'm going to a community college and I'm taking fire behavior classes and whatnot. And one of my instructors, he was a captain for Corona Fire, and he just gets frank with us, during one of the lectures, and he says, "Hey, just so everyone here understands, for the long haul, the average firefighter in Southern California doesn't get hired on until they're 28." Well, I'm 17 at the time, so I start doing the math, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Well, at this time, so this is 1999, and in 1999, if as soon as like one application opened up, you would have, a couple thousand people,
Yeah, I was going to say, is that
in line.
oversubscription? Is it lack of life experience? Is it just take that long to get your courses? Because you have to do a lot of your own we have to do all your own qualifications in the US. The US UK model is very different.
Yeah, so I'd say it's different in some instances. It's certainly aligned more over the years.
Okay.
Um, but it depends on which department. Some departments you can go to and you just need a driver's license and, a
I'll take you.
pulse, right? Doesn't mean you're going to get hired. It just means that opens up the competition, right?
Yeah, I
And
think
then
we're
other
we're
places
we're
you need
certainly
to.
closer to that one, to be honest with you.
What's
Have
that?
you got a pulse? Do you roughly know what gender you are? Then we'll
Yeah, yeah.
probably take you. If you don't know what gender you are, you might actually score higher, to be
Right, right,
honest.
right.
But yeah, and I hate that sometimes because I hate it when people go, and yeah, we do EDI support and all that sort of jazz, and I'm for that and all that shit. But I don't really care what your background is, to an
Sure.
extent. The pass mark is, can you do the job? Can you do it well? And when people say anyone can do the job, I think you're creating a very, very dangerous environment for that. And I think you're also in service to the person who perhaps has never considered the fire service before and all of a sudden has aspirations, but perhaps isn't sort of cognitively aligned to the demands of the job. They're probably going to have a really shit time as well. So I don't think anybody can do the job. I don't think that makes it special. I don't think I could do palliative care for long people with long-term debilitating, sort of fatal illnesses, terminal illnesses, because I think that's a really fucking hard job. My sister and my missus are teachers. I don't think I'd be very good at that job. So I don't buy the anybody can do the job thing. I don't know if that's been a sort of recruitment pitch that's sort of marched out over there at all, but yeah, it frustrates me when we start going down that sort of narrative.
Yeah, I think it's a remark that needs to be qualified, right?
Mhm.
And that is, uh, when people say anyone can do the job, they're basically saying everyone has the the mental and physical faculties, um, the capability. Not anyone. I think that's probably the best way. Is everyone has the capability of doing the job, versus
Yes.
anyone can do the job. Those are two different
Mm.
ways of going about it.
And
And
then you move to the metric of doing it well. And
yeah,
obviously
oh yeah,
that's a
for sure.
romantic, thing of, oh, well, I think I'm good. And you don't think I'm good or shit or whatever it is. But it's more to me of, there's a guy called John McDonough who we have on the podcast every now and again. He's from Australia. And he says firefighters raised to a level of mediocrity to avoid further scrutiny. And I
Yeah.
think it's so pertinent and poignant to say that, because you do just create this competency framework where we go,
Mhm.
oh, well, he's competent. That's a big terminology that we use in the UK. And that's just one or two marks above dangerous, in
Right.
my personal opinion. And I'm the whole point of the podcast is me being an eternal student and listening to people like yourself. I don't pretend to be great at anything. I have an aspirations to continue to be a better firefighter. But
Right.
I think we create too much of a low bar, and they always say you fall to the level of your training. You don't rise to it at the moment, really.
Yeah. 1,000%.
Hmm.
Yeah. Just to hit on that real quick, Pete, is really what happens, and especially as we talk about leadership, it's capitulation at the end of the day.
Mm.
Um, Whenever you raise the standard, or hold a standard, you wind up creating quite a few, I don't want to say enemies, but I mean the enemies happen, but you certainly create an extreme amount of resistance. And what happens is people in my position, or captains or battalion chiefs or whatever, they eventually get to work and they're like, man, this can, whether they do this, I would say, whether they do it with a real train of thought or passively, like actively or
Yeah,
passively.
whether they're consciously doing it or whether it's just
Yeah.
out of
But the
frustration that
thought,
yeah.
yeah, they do make the decision, and they make this decision every day. It's like, am I going to make my life easier today going into work, or am I going to hold the line? And I would say 9 times out of 10, just in my own experience, um, most people in leadership positions will take the easy road because they just,
Mm.
everyone has stuff going on. And this is not me attacking other people either, because like everyone has life that's going on.
Mhm.
It's not just the fire service. The fire service is just part of their life.
Mhm.
And uh, like I always say, if the home life isn't right, nothing's right. And so, like,
Mhm.
that's the last thing, a battalion chief that's going through a divorce is going to be worried about, like making sure everyone's getting the training done. And,
Yeah.
it's just things start taking the back burner.
Mhm.
And that's an extreme example, but it's
It's a common
capitulation
one
at
though.
the end of the day.
Yeah. Why are we drawn to that sort of cop out? Because we all want the path of, we don't all want, that's the thing, actually, catching myself even saying it. We don't want the path of least resistance, but we get very romantic about wanting people to have similar aspirations, similar drives to us. And I think historically, and I don't know if this is a military thing as well, in the army, you attract a lot of type A people, a lot of fucking get shit done, let's fucking strap on a pack and go for it till our fucking knees bleed. I don't think that's healthy past a certain point, but you do need to have a dose of that. I remember someone saying to me that the poison is in the dose. And I think that's a nice analogy for pretty much anything in life. And drive, dedication, perseverance, resilience, commitment to the standard is good. But does that, I mean, that sits on a spectrum that can become toxic for leaders depending on the dose. But I think certainly in today's sort of cultural uh, sort of environment, if you will, those things can be aligned to toxic masculinity and, a shout back to the patriarchy and all this sort of shit. And then we tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater and we go, we're not a military service. We're not discipline is not a positive word in any stretch of the imagination. And I think the pendulum swings way too far the other way. And that then discourages people, perhaps like yourself or like myself, who are very romantic about the standards and personal disciplines. And those people can start to feel very, very alienated and perhaps just shrink because of the fear of being ousted by the organization if they're seen to be a bit too harsh or a bit too rigid. I mean, you have this concept, when you speak around heating, shaping, cooling, and polishing, that heating element of forging teams is a tricky area to navigate.
Yeah. No, it certainly is, and that's where I've noticed that people, especially brand new leaders or ones that have been around for a while and they're just still growing, they don't even get past the first stage of this, and it goes back to what we just talked about. They try and skip the steps, and they try and go straight to, shaping how they want their people to look, or cooling. They go just straight towards trying to fix a culture. And the issue with that is people don't work that way.
Don't.
And you're dealing at the end of the day, you're dealing with people, and the tricky thing about people is we're all the same, but we're all different. Um, Meaning universally, there's a lot of things that just people do, and
Hmm.
that men are always going to do, or females are always going to do, because we just have the same DNA, right?
Hmm.
Um, but with that, there's individualism, and that's the tricky part about being a leader is, you want to be consistent on these things, and so you take some of these universal approaches, but those universal approaches, the cookie cutter approaches, don't work with everyone because at the end of
No.
the day, we're all still individuals.
I always say
Um,
treat everybody fairly, but don't treat them the same.
yeah,
Because
no,
they're not
that's
the fucking same.
100%.
They've all had
Yeah,
different upbringings. My dad and the way he treated me will be different than how your dad treated you. And it's
right.
not a better or worse fucking childhood competition. It's just
Yeah,
that we all have different reward metrics. We all have ways that we like to be acknowledged. We all have ways that we like to be trained, don't we? And I think, yeah, that when we fall into the equality and equity world, we get caught up in this treat everybody the same thing. I'm like, no, don't work. I don't want it.
yeah. Well, it's easier said than done, right? Because, like the fire service leader that is trying to do his or her best in influencing people in a positive way. Well, yeah, this thing called bureaucracy, and bureaucracy says that we need to treat everyone equally and put everyone on the same playing field. And navigating that, while trying to find um, individualistic ways of getting the best out of people doesn't
Hmm.
look like equal. And so the I guess the fallback for most people in formal leadership positions is to do that, because
Hmm.
it's just easier. It's easier at the end of the day, and it's safer, and it's less risk.
Hmm.
But I would say, um, really what it comes down to, Pete, is, and you brought it up in the beginning where you said you were a student. Those
Hmm.
those are the people I've found to be the best at their job as you advance in rank,
Hmm.
is being a student.
Hmm.
Um, uh,
How do you balance that humility with pride? Because people do sometimes we get to like an age where I've finished school, I'm not a fucking kid anymore, and people think they've got the answers. I've got this deck of cards, which is my life skill set, and now I'm ready to go out there to fucking crush the world. But maintaining a student mindset isn't linked to immaturity, and people think of it that way. I think it's just maybe frame it as curiosity more than anything. Um, but for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, because you'll move on to a new station or something like that, and you'll encounter someone in their mid to late 30s whose standards have adapted or dropped over the years. They're at a station at the arse end of nowhere. They don't get any calls. And they've not had any feedback that anything they're doing is wrong. Now you might walk in and go, "This is fucking dangerous." Like you guys are so far away. You're outside right on the edge of the fringes of the standard that when you layer up like that Swiss cheese model, like if we layer up all these deficiencies within your team, there's a fatal accident that we could encounter here out on the incident ground because of all of these relaxed standards that seem to have been adopted. Like, how do you balance being proud, clearly a type A person getting after it and still remain in a student mindset? Because I'd always prefer, I don't mind having an inexperienced crew. Like, I'd rather choose a mindset over a skill set any day. Do you know what I mean? Someone that is eager to learn. Because most of the stuff, me, the service, the organization, we would teach you it in like 3 to 6 months. We could teach you most things. But if you haven't got a mindset, that is almost, I'm not sure that neuroplasticity drops off as we get older, doesn't it? And I'm not sure, some people are just like got concrete mindsets by that point, and it's almost not worth trying to change them.
Yeah. Well, that's a huge question, Pete, because
That's
few
my
things in
ADHD.
there.
There's like fucking 10 questions there, brother. Sorry. This is going to be an ongoing theme. I'm sorry.
No. It's not that there's a lot of questions in there. It's that it's a deep question. And so
Yeah.
that's a big answer. So a couple of different things in there is, one is, you mentioned changing people. And uh, as a young leader, I thought I could. Um, as older and wiser now, I've learned that you don't change people. It is impossible. The only person that can change someone is that person.
Yeah.
They truly have to want to make those changes for themselves. And typically, people don't change themselves unless there's some type of life altering event.
Yeah.
And then they get to that raw self where they do want to make some changes. But that's not to say, and this is where the confusing part, I think, for um, people in the leadership circle, because I hear it a lot of like changing people and making change and stuff like that. um, it's, we can influence, but it's the influence is behavioral and it's surface level. Meaning, as soon
Mhm.
as, so influence, it's kind of like when you apply heat to something, right? When I apply heat to something, it's going to raise the temperature. As soon as I pull that heat away, what happens? Well, it
Mhm.
goes back to whatever the um, you know
Yeah. It's
outside
original shape.
temperature is,
Yeah.
whatever its current temperature is, right? And so leadership works the same exact way. And but what people try and do is, they try and instead of just raising the temperature of something, they try and turn um, something that is an axe into a sledgehammer, and it's just like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
And so the example I like to use is like anybody who's married. you know like when I'm doing
Mhm.
conferences, I'll ask, like, hey, raise your hand if anyone here is married. And like, 3/4 of the audience will raise their hand.
Yep.
Okay. Now, keep your hand raised if you've changed your wife, and all the hands go down. Like, and then I'll be like, okay, well, like, raise your hand if you have a teenager. And then, like, a lot of people raise their hand. Like, now, keep your hand raised if you've changed your teenager on, you know, their ways once they became teenagers. And it's like, hands go down. And the
Mhm.
reason being is, like, you can't even change the people that you're closest to, have the best relationships with, that you see all the time. And you want to go into a firehouse and change people that, you're not even blood relatives with, like, you're
Yeah.
just coworkers, especially a boss.
Mhm.
Like, you're not even like a best friend, like you're a supervisor, maybe even second supervisor removed, and you're going to try
Yeah.
and change people. Just like the fact that, we're still having this conversation in 2025 is
Mhm.
mind-boggling. The why, like,
I
I
think
have to be the
it's
first to
remarkably
tell people.
complex though, isn't it?
What's that?
That's why it's going to be the perennial problem because it's so complex. I want to push back on the daughter versus the spouse element.
Hmm.
So I don't, I don't think we can. Think our partners can change, as in our romantic partners. Not we don't change them, but we do train
Mhm,
each other. Like I always say this to my missus, like we're always training each other. Like me,
mhm,
me and her, we're in a relationship. If I want to show her love, I'll do these 7 things. I might, hold her hand, kiss her in public, make her some food, whatever. If that's not how she receives love, I'm relying on her to train me on how she receives love because I want her to feel loved. You know what I mean? If my way of loving her is kissing her in public and she doesn't like public displays of affection, that's going to ick her out. She's going to fucking hate that. But we do train each other. But the point where I'm agreeing with you is they have to want it.
mhm.
She wants to be closer to me. Therefore, she's got skin in the game. So we're receptive to each other's like calls to the universe, if you will, about how we want each other to behave. Whereas with a child, you're right. I mean, up until maybe my daughter's 13, so up until like 9, 10, they want to please you, and the number probably different for every parent. And then after that, it does shift into a you need me more than I need you because I want my daughter to keep loving me and I want her to want to spend time with me. She's got lots of friends and she doesn't spend as much time with me anymore because she's busy and all that shit. And I think they become more acutely aware of that, hence why they push back. And then our ability to change them drops off. And I don't know how I'm going to crowbar that into the workplace part of our conversation because you're right. In the workplace, I mean, you need the job. You don't need me to like you. You probably don't even care whether or not I like you or don't like you. We have a visceral want to be part of a pack though, don't we? We do want acceptance from the team. So I don't know how much cultural tokens that buys us in terms of trying to change people's behaviors because yeah, I'm agreeing with you in the workplace it's nigh on impossible, but also there's the whole thing like if you can't change the people around, change the people around, but you can't just if everybody just moved to stations to get away from the lazy dickheads, like we'd run out of stations to go to. Past a certain point, you have to work with these people, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. Um, Going back to like the spouse,
Yep.
teenage, teenagers, um, it's it's a harder one to compare,
Yep.
because we can get trapped in um, that difference between influence and change. Meaning,
True.
you as a husband, it may look like change, but really what we're talking about is your daily influence on her life, her daily influence on your life.
Yeah.
It influences behavior. And so
Hmm.
when behaviors change, it looks like change, but the core of
That
that
was a lag
person,
measure. The lead measure was influence. Yeah.
right? And so like
Mhm.
the core of that person typically is the same.
Mhm.
Um, and really when I ask that question, it's really the stuff that we're like, this is the stuff that's annoying about our partner or whatever, and it's like,
Yeah.
like whatever that may be is very
Yeah.
talkative, always interrupting, like
Yeah.
that always
That's me. I
interrupting
always
just
interrupt.
stays. And you're like, man, just stop interrupting me, like whatever.
I'm terrible.
Yeah, like I don't know, I'm just making that up,
No, no,
um,
it's
but
true.
yeah, at the end of the day, like there's things that our coworkers do, like we want them to have, let's say, more passion for the job, right? That's something we want to change about them. But really what we're saying is, hey, that's something I want to influence into their behavior. And so, okay, how do I do that in a constructive way?
Hmm.
And how do I do that for the needs of every single one of these people that are in my tutelage?
Yep.
And so there lies the trick. And many people fail at it, to include myself. I've failed many times over I'm still failing over it.
Hmm.
Um, and it's
Well,
typically
every person you come to is a different puzzle, aren't they? So,
what's
like
that?
every person that you come to is a different puzzle. So there's only so far these strategies can take us. You've got to be adaptive to every single person. That's why great leaders are chameleons, aren't they? Because you've got to adapt to that person's own little puzzle piece that is life. They're not going to be the same as the ones you've worked for before. You've got to have sort of insatiable desire to adapt and build rapport with every new person. So I think, like you say, failure in leadership is it's not a it's not a bug, it's a feature. You should expect it every time.
Yeah. Um, Uh, certainly, and it's something that I struggle with daily because it's part of my identity of, wanting to influence people in a positive way every day of my life, and so,
Mhm,
it's even harder for the student of the game, because you're dealing with that failure all the time, and you're very aware of the failure,
mhm,
and so it becomes even harder to deal with the more you become a student,
mhm,
because you wanna do well at it, and you want to um, succeed in this thing we call influence. Where I've seen the most failure, and one may or may not even consider it failure. When it comes to influence and leadership, there is uh, a bad message out there, um, or a improper train of thought, I should say,
okay,
Pete, and that is leadership really when we say like the romantic version of
mhm,
leadership, we're really talking about proximal influence. We're talking about people that are within your sphere. And why I stress the team thing so much is because that's where real leadership is. However, we like to talk about leadership when we're second, third, fourth people removed, meaning, oh, that fire chief is a great leader. And it's like,
okay,
No, the fire chief, they may be a great leader for, let's say, their division. I don't know, like everyone's, organizational structure, but like their deputy chief and they're a great leader, within the city council.
mhm,
But when it comes to leading the fire department, they do very, 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 very little leadership. It's administration, it's
mhm,
supervision, it's management. And so we like to use this term leadership universally when someone's doing a good job. But they could be a terrible leader, but they can make up for it in other ways. They can
mm,
make up for it in being an excellent manager. They can make up for being an excellent supervisor. And those are
mhm,
different skills
mhm,
um, that you have to have, especially the more you go up in rank, actually, the less leadership skills you need and the more supervisory skills, administrative skills, and management skills you need. um, the lower you are on the totem pole, the more leadership you need. So as a firefighter, you
yes,
need more leadership ability as a firefighter than as a captain does. Doesn't get talked about. You need, as a captain, you need more leadership ability than a battalion chief. And
mhm.
here's my justification for that. The most purest form of leadership is informal leadership because you don't have rank, you don't have anything, you have no formal structure. The only way you can influence someone is purely based off of you. There is no pure form of leadership than that
I
buddy
was
sitting.
gonna say the volunteer sector. I see great leadership in the volunteer sector because I can't even sack you. I've got no power. You know what I mean? To get you to want to do something, I've got no levers to pull organizationally to get you to do shit. You've got to want to do it with me. You've got to want to walk to this beat and go in this direction. And I think, yeah, those I'd never thought about it in our world, but you're right, because similar to like you say, to, at the firefighter level, you haven't got all of these administrative tricks or I can allow you to go on this course, therefore I can what's your fucking job? Put me on that course. That's not leadership. That's fucking admin. That's just you sorting out the crew's skill sets. That's not you leading me. But yeah, I'd
Exactly.
never thought about it that way.
No, that's exactly right. And so, but what happens is it gets convoluted
Hmm.
as this leadership thing. And so like that's why I have a hard time with like when they come out with studies and like they're
Mm,
like, oh, like the fire service is having a leadership problem. Well, it's dirty data because what people think is leadership was just bad management. Meaning,
ah,
hey, there should have been a different way they went around, annual leave schedules. Well, like, no,
mhm,
that's just a bad manager. That's not a bad leader. But
yeah.
because you're in a leadership position, like, oh, well, that's a bad leader. And I've seen it so many times where um, either someone was like a really good manager, and because they're in a certain position that requires more management than leadership, someone's
Yeah.
called a good leader, but they're actually a terrible leader. or people that were really good leaders, were just bad managers, but they, got along with, well with people, they were charismatic or whatever, but they couldn't manage
Mm.
their way out of a wet paper bag. And so,
Yeah.
it's at the end of the day, like, the conversation when it comes to educating people needs to be on that, and that is, hey, what is leadership and what does that really look like? And to me, leadership is developing a team. That's the only, at least in my experience, it's the only real way, the only real job any leader has. Like when we say
Okay.
when we're talking about just leadership, we take away the supervision, we take away the management, because even a leader needs some of that stuff, right? But those
Hmm.
aren't leadership skill sets. That's just
No.
someone in a formal leader position needs to
Hmm.
also have these other skills and abilities.
Mm.
But when it comes to the verb leader, right, which now we're talking about influencing behavior, the only real output of that is, have you or can you develop a team? That's it. And so when it comes to leadership at every level of the organization, that's why I say, like, hey, at every level of the organization, if you're going to lead, you're going to develop a team at that level of the organization. So if you're let's say an assistant chief, well, you
Hmm.
need to be developing a leadership team with all your battalion chiefs. Like, that's where you're leading. Everything else, if you don't have a team of battalion chiefs that work for you and work with you, you're actually not leading at all. You're just managing, supervising, administrating.
Mm.
If you are a battalion chief and within your battalion, you don't have a team of captains, meaning all the captains are just doing their own thing, like
Yeah.
all on different, wavelengths. You haven't developed a team at all. In fact, you don't have leadership ability.
How I, I've never. I'm pausing for thought here because I feel like what we have been optimizing for. When I look at the leadership qualifications in the UK, Institute of Fire Engineers, leadership and management level 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever else it is, and executive leadership programs. So many of them, in my experience, the courses that I've been on, are about absorbing and regurgitating literature and academia around leadership principles, but all of that is done in isolation, and it's whether or not you can remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs or John Adair's team task management, whatever the model is, team task individual. And I think we optimize for people that can absorb and regurgitate leadership information, but it never survives first contact. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I blame academia on a lot of it. Um, uh, and I think some of it is just even how leadership even became, how it morphed in academia, because
Hmm.
um, throughout the 20th century, management principles was the thing. Um, and that was because of the type of work that was done around the world in this new industrial age, and
Yeah.
how to optimize efficiency and effectiveness. It was all about management principles. But
We moved
as we
into complex factories that required timetables and stock and asset
Yes,
management and resources, and it became complex and
very
almost required
complex.
less leadership because it was the Industrial Revolution, as you refer to.
Yep. And then so what
Mm.
happened is we started going into this digital age.
Hmm.
And in the digital age, it's less about that type of work and more about autonomy. Well, what do you
Yep.
need in autonomy is you need more leadership, as well as our culture changing. And
Hmm.
so, academia obviously started to change with that. But the issue with it is that the convolution is, because it started because of it's what we call anchoring bias. Academia had an anchoring bias in management principles and tried to morph that into leadership principles and then spew it out across the world and say, this is leadership.
This is leadership.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's why like while writing my book, I talk about it, and that is I practice every single thing that I learned
Hmm.
in academia on leadership. And so my master's degree was on leadership and my doctorate was on leadership. And so it's like, man, I want these principles, right? And I want to apply them because I want to be a great leader. And then what I found out is like, oh, well, this doesn't work for leadership. Like it works in certain circumstances and whatnot, but it failed the leadership test where I was just kind of on my own. It's like, okay, well, what does work? How do I make this thing work that we call
Yeah.
leadership and influencing behavior? And so that's where I just started making my own stuff. That's where you see the forging the team process. And um, for example, we're still using um, forming, storming, norming, performing,
Yeah.
and adjourning. Like that was constructed by Bruce Tuckman in 1965. Like we're like almost 75 years into this thing. I didn't do the math, but like, 3/4 of a century, and and that's being taught in academia today. And it's not that like it's not still relevant,
Hmm.
but there's way more nuances to how a team is formed than
Hmm.
Bruce Tuckman's 5 steps. It's too rudimentary, especially what I found out in the fire service. And so that's why I made my own. Is like, no, this is what I observed every single team that I had, and I just started writing down like, oh, this is what people are going through. This is what the team is going through, and
Mm.
this is what it's more aching like than just than forming. Like, no, that's not quite it. And so, yeah, I just came up with my own theories. And what happened is I started actually replicating these things like, oh man, like, um, there is truth to this because it's working over and over and over again. And so now you can put me in any situation, doesn't matter, with any amount of people, and having the secret sauce on how to build a team. I can build a team. I don't care. You can put me in Google. I'm gonna have a team. You can put me wherever, because people, like we talked about, are universally the same.
That is a really difficult concept for a lot of people, myself included, at times, because you're so in that unconscious bias, like you say, anchored bias of the models that people have learned. But it almost is a perpetual frustration because no one ever sits down when they enter their new team and gets out. Well, I bet some of them do and write it on the board and go, right, we're going to use this, Norman performance, Norman fucking model framework or anything like that. It lacks any um almost human connection. But I wanted to come back for a second just to the standards thing that we touched on earlier. And I felt like when I was reading through some of our notes, there's this framework around how standards are loving and like caring and not just punitive, if you know what I mean. How how can we impose? How can we encourage? How can we get people to adopt this? Because in that heating process you speak about, setting non-negotiable standards effectively.
Yeah.
Talk on that for a minute because that can seem a little fiery for a lot of people.
Yeah. So, there's processes within processes. And so, universally, right, that's what we want to try and achieve is to um raise the standard. And so what you're
Mhm,
asking me is like, okay, well, that's not as easy as it's said to do. And so the process within that process for me, um is first and foremost is not coming in with the hammer, right? It
okay,
is purely observational. Um, it's truly understanding how people are moving, how people are acting, what the real standard is, especially as a new leader, and allowing them a time to adjust to you. And I think
okay,
and that's one of the things I learned from uh, uh, Colonel Powell's book
mhm,
is, he said 60 days. After 60 days, you own it, basically, is what he said in the book.
mhm,
Um, but I did take his advice, and that is like, hey, just come in and observe. Don't make don't make changes. And see, even that is easier said than done, because when you are a change leader and you're seeing this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, and then on top of that, let's say you're newly promoted, or you've been put into a different battalion or given a different, engine company to be the change leader, your
Mhm.
bosses are like, they're like, we want change yesterday. And to say that that pressure isn't on you would be a lie. Because you're having those conversations. They're like, hey, firefighter Snuffy screwed up again. I put you in this leadership position, and like, you got to tell him, I'm in my observational period, like,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh yeah, you're just like everyone else. No change is going to happen. Um,
Yeah.
and so there's this external pressure, and then there's internal pressure, because you're observing things that you don't want to tolerate. And anything you tolerate, right, is now the new norm. And so you're saying this in your head.
Yeah.
And so it's understanding you got to fight those two battles. Um,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, those are battles. What we're trying to do is win the war. And so when you want to win the war, you have to resist those internal and external influences and truly observe the people that you want to raise the standard on. And so, in the midst of that, what I do is in order to raise the standard, is I have found that the most powerful thing you can do to change a standard is align with the informal leader of the group. That's it. Like, I think it doesn't get talked about enough.
I always call him the cultural architect. Like,
Yes, the
find that
culture. I love that. I'm
person.
gonna steal that one, Pete.
Yeah.
I love that. Whoever
That's
that cultural architect is, because that could be negative or
yeah.
positive.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to. That's why the observational period is so important. Is
Uh-huh.
the
You
person
got to
you
find
may
the power
even
players.
think.
They're the levers that you need to pull on, aren't they? They're the ones that you need on board, whether you need to stroke their ego, whether you need to acknowledge them publicly, whether you need to ask them for advice. And you're like, Johnny, the crew obviously look up to you. I mean, you've been here on the station the longest. I really need your help with putting some drills together because, I mean, what's your thoughts on where the team's at with fucking extrication or fire behavior? And they'll go, oh, yeah, I mean, they're shit. I mean, I'll sort them out, boss. I know what he's saying because we've both got high standards, and you almost sometimes need to do a bit of that ego massage to get that person on board. But if you make them your enemy because you see them as the agitator, fuck me, it's not worth it. Like
It's
they're the
over.
ones yeah, it's over.
Yep, it's
They
over.
will outlast you and they will turn the team against you.
Yeah, that's why I would take it even one step further, Pete, and I would say it's more than a conversation. It starts with a conversation, but really what it is, it's a request, and the request is, will you lead the team with me? And how you get them, and every time I've made this request to an informal leader, and I would say at least half the time they were um, either negative people or toxic people. Um, they've all and people that did not want me as their leader. Let's
Mm,
almost 100% of them were that. It was like being
hmm.
promoted over them, or they already had
Yeah.
issues with the organization. Now I'm just the man because I have a formal leadership position. They don't even want me to be their leader. But
Hmm.
yet I have 1,000% batting average on it. And the reason why is you be transparent with them. And you nailed it.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, just so we're both on the same page, you have all the influence on this team. I
Hmm.
don't have any of it. Um, I can't do this without you. Here's where I would like to go. Can we do it together? Obviously it's a longer conversation than that, but that's the
Hmm.
framework of each of these conversations. And once you do that, and you empower them in that way by talking about the elephant in the room,
Hmm.
and sometimes they don't even realize it themselves, which is also strange that they have all the influence. So like, it's almost like an awakening to them too. Like,
Yeah.
man, I do have all this power, like, it's crazy. And this person recognizes that and they want to, do it with me. I don't know that, I don't know their thoughts, but I would assume sometimes that those thoughts are going through their head. But nonetheless, is if you want to have any type of standard, you need
Hmm.
to observe and understand what the standard truly is. And it's typically not as bad as we think. It's typically
No.
death by a thousand razor blades kind of thing.
Mhm, mhm,
It's typically they have an informal leader that's checked out, and it's like you said, the cultural architect of the
mhm,
the team has veered them off course. So
mhm.
those two things alone, before we get into even a bigger answer, will get you 90% of the way there. Now, there's obviously a lot more work to do, but that's where you need to start is observe and see who that informal leader is, have that conversation. And then from there, you need to have a plan. Um, and you need to communicate that plan to the entire group with that informal leader. Because remember, we said we're leading together. And so, like, no, you're truly leading as a team. And so that's why I say in the book, like, if you're leading alone, you're managing. And
Yeah.
that's just how it works because I believe leadership is team development and you shouldn't be developing a team on your own. It
Mm.
should be partnered.
So when you're when you're going through those initial stages and you're getting a lot of resistance, you're getting a lot of you go through that shock phase, as I think you refer to it. How how long have I got to sit in this shitty puddle for? Like, are we talking a week? Are we talking a month? I know that's a crap impossible question because it will be different for every team, but you don't want to set a new standard of passiveness. Do you know what I mean? Or appearing a pushover. And that can get triggered in people depending on their level of self awareness, self confidence, their comfort in their own communication style and their own values. Um, we don't, there's a fine line between people resisting and people taking the piss.
Yeah. So, how I've approached that situation, and this is where I've failed as a leader is one, you shouldn't really let your foot off the gas
Okay.
unless, and this is
So
where
what is this?
I've messed up so many times is because what you said, like if you're not consistent with that stuff, you, it's the inconsistency, right? And so,
Mhm.
um, the more you push, the people that are there to collect a paycheck become more and more of your enemy.
Yeah.
And that's where I've ran into most of my issues as a leader and in my career is I am oil and water with those people.
Right.
That type of personality, not those people, just that type of personality.
Yep.
Uh, and so where I'm still growing as a leader is knowing um, when to call people out on that standard and
Hmm.
when not to, because there is a time and a place for it that I'm learning. Um, and sometimes it's tripwire, meaning they can act completely normal at work, right? Like there's nothing that's giving your spidey senses like, oh, this person's going through something outside of the fact that they're just not up to the standard that day. Maybe they're trying to skip their checkouts in the morning, or
Hmm.
maybe maybe it's an attitude type of thing where they're just coming into roll call grumpy,
Hmm.
and maybe they're your informal leader, and so like pull them to the side, like, hey man, you know what we're trying to achieve here? Um, I need you, and I need you every shift, not just some shifts, because they're watching you, they're not watching me, and you empower them, and you get them. But the problem with that is, if they're going through stuff, you can be
Hmm.
pushing too hard,
Hmm.
and they're not always going to be telling you either. Like, hey, because you can. Okay, the fix is, and this is what academia tell you. Oh, just ask him. Like, hey, how you doing? Well, as you know, Type A personalities, they're not just letting you in. Even if
No.
like I even have like best friends. Like, I don't. My best friend in the entire world. I don't let them know every little thing I'm going through. Like, hey, how's it going? Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Like you're resilient.
Hmm.
We're just built differently, in a lot of
And
ways.
also, it's none of your business. You're my
Yeah, it's none of
manager.
your business.
It's
Yeah,
none of your fucking
and
business.
honestly, it's almost empathetic sometimes too, because like everyone's dealing with their own stuff, and now I'm just dumping this on you when it's something that like I could just deal with myself. But you know, sometimes I'm not behaving or doing the things I should be doing because I'm going through it, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that's just life. That's just life.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, it's
There's got to be a
navigating
cutoff
that
for that, though.
tripwire. What's that?
Like you said, there's got to be a cutoff for that, though.
Yeah.
You know, you can
So
come in a bad mood 1, 2 days. When it becomes 3 days in a row and there's just recreational negativity and
yes,
blame thrower pessimism around and the eye rolls and all that shit. Do you know what I
you
mean?
nailed it, Pete.
That's when you're like, I've got to do something about this, mate. What's wrong? What's the matter? What is
Yes,
this? Talk to
that's
me.
it. It's the
Because
trending.
I always say to people, like, don't make me be a manager.
Right.
Sometimes I say to people, I'm like, don't make me be a manager. Talk to me. Talk to me. Come on. If we have to have a paper between me and you or a policy, something has gone horribly wrong.
Hmm.
And I'm reaching out, brother. I'm reaching out. Talk to me. Please talk to me. I know you might think you're going to say it wrong. I'm going to say it wrong. Let's fumble through this conversation together because otherwise we're only left with formal options.
Yeah.
Help me help you. Come on. Get in this shitty puddle with me because at the minute you're just giving me the evil eyes from the other side and we can't. This is not working. Um and I can sometimes
Yeah.
be a bit too playful sometimes, and that's where I fail, maybe, because I'm very impatient. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm too impatient. I think that's one of my biggest failings. Anyway, don't want to drag us down into that personal coaching element, but we can do it at some point. So yeah, if you've tried every trick in the book, you've tried to build rapport, some of this stuff is not going to work. You know what I mean? It past a certain point, and that's what I
Yep.
really struggle with sometimes. Some watches, some stations, they've just been so heavily entrenched for so
Well,
long.
I would say it sometimes it doesn't work in the moment, Pete, but
Yeah,
over
true.
time it does. And
That's where
I
my
thought
impatience
you
comes in.
really nailed it on the head when you said like the trending. So here's an example is um I have a leadership team and I have a person that is the so you can have as you go up in rank, it's the informal leader is technically a formal leader,
Mhm.
but they're the informal leader on the team because they're not the person in charge of the team. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so I have a leader who's the informal leader on our team, and he knows it. Like we've had the conversation, and he's done 180 degrees. He was the negative guy,
Mhm.
and now he's the spearhead guy. He's awesome. Um, However, there was a stint of a couple weeks, and that's just how long it took him to get out of, the funk he was in. But it was, it's at home stuff. And then
Mhm.
there's bureaucracy at work, that adds on to that. And so people will start to resort to that negative side if they started out negative. And so I noticed this with this um, informal slash formal leader and I knew he was going through it. And so old Johnny would have been like jumping on like, "Hey man, I need you," like positive, not getting on him. But I allowed him time, to see
Mhm.
if he would just pull himself out of it. And like you said, we get into the third shift and it's the same thing. And I see it's starting to affect firefighters, right?
Mhm.
And so then at that point, I talked to my other people on our team. It was like, "Hey, have you noticed the same thing, going on with,
Mhm. Whoever.
let's say Smith, right?"
Mhm.
And they're like, "Yeah." And so my approach was like, "Hey, before I have a discussion with them, why don't you have a discussion with them?" And so I tried it from that angle. And he's like, "Oh, it's hard because, they know that this person's going through the same thing as well." And so those are hard conversations, even for friends on the team with that person. But you ask them anyways. You're using some relationship equity with those people on your team to try and do it because it's just like parenting, right? Like, or anything else. You
Mhm.
want to try and change behavior with the least amount of intercession as possible. The least amount of like,
Mhm.
uh,
Friction.
yeah, infringement. There you go. Good.
Mm.
And so like, and so that was what I was attempting, and it didn't work. Uh, which is fine, right? Because, you try it. And so just like, okay, this needs a conversation with me. And so then it's all about intentionality. It's like, okay, um, I'm getting irritated because, you know, in my mind, because I'm like, man, this person knows what the standard is. Two, they also know how influential they are. Three, they're now influencing the rest of the shift in a very
Mm,
negative way. It's starting to bleed into like a lot of things
mhm.
because of the amount of influence they have. And so you start getting frustrated with that. Um, and at the same time, you know it's a very real life situation they're going through with their family, that I was very aware of. And so uh I balance all those things, and what I wound up doing is, okay, I'm going to make this as an informal thing as possible, because if I make it into this formal thing, like coming to my office, let's have a
Yeah.
discussion, it just sends a different vibe.
Mhm.
And so ultimately what I decided on was, we have individual bunk rooms in our departments.
Okay.
I asked him, I sent him a text. I was like, "Hey man, you got a few minutes to talk? Like, I wanted to hit you up about a couple things." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, what's up, man?" So I was like, "Cool, I'll come to your room." And so I wanted to be in his environment, um, to where he felt like he was in control of the conversation, that he felt he was still, it's that
Yeah.
subliminal, like, where you're trying to put someone in the best frame of mind to have a hard conversation. And I felt like in the bumper outside where people can be walking by wasn't good. I felt my office would be too sterile and too much of a power play, when I wasn't even interested in any of that. And
Mhm.
so, point being is you go into these things intentionally, right? And then from there, it's okay. Where am I going to be standing up? And I'm be sitting down,
Yeah.
my body posture and that body language. And then I start thinking, okay, the tone of voice. And then I start thinking about, okay, how do I open this up? And what do I want to achieve at the end of it? And so you start coming up with a communication plan. And so I came up with my communication plan on how I was going to, um, you know, talk to this individual on something that, like, the last thing he wants to deal with is, you know, his attitude at work when he's going through
Mhm.
major life
Mhm.
stuff. And so, at the end of the day, though, it worked. And that was, this person took accountability and responsibility. He's like, basically, his words in a nutshell was, I see it, I get it. Um, Give me a few days, but I'm gonna be back on track. But I'm with you, and it's just me.
I
Kind
think
of.
that element of planning for a difficult conversation is really, really important. I do that as well. I have a framework that I'll lay out depending on the problem, depending if it's professional or if it's personal. I have sort of two different models that I'll use, and then planning the environment, like you say, planning the room. And people think, oh, you're not setting up for a date. I'm like, I'm going to be too formal about this, but where do I want to have this conversation? Because I also think, like, I think it's the same when I go on a date. Like
Mm,
when I was dating before I was with my partner here, I going for a walk date, I think, is a much better than sitting opposite each other at a table. Sitting opposite each other at a table is very, in its just sheer geography, it's very opposing. It forces eye contact, which we shouldn't be scared of. It's important. But when we go for a walk with my dogs, we can talk. We don't have to talk. We can people watch. We're beside each other. We're equals. I'm not above you, below you, anything like that. So whether it's stood out the back of the station on the bench, having a chat with somebody versus pulling them into an office, and also don't make good the enemy of perfect. I think I said that before we started our recording. Like, don't make good the enemy of perfect. Like, you want to make a sterile environment where you're not going to be interrupted because you're going to talk about a sensitive subject. Yeah, but there's actually nothing to stop you doing it just outside or even in the bays. Yeah, someone might walk in and interrupt, and you just go, "Hey man, just give us a second. I was just talking about some plans on training for the next 6 months. Just make up some bullshit. It doesn't matter."
yep.
But sometimes thinking about that environment a bit more tactically, I think, is
Hmm.
a big one. Equally, like, not putting yourself between them and the door. If people want to get up and leave, they can get up and leave. That's absolutely fine. Little things like that, I think,
Yep.
really do make a difference in how you navigate this. Your body language is massive. Body language and mirroring. I'm fascinated with this sort of stuff. I really love it. When I look at interviewing for jobs and stuff like that. We do interview training in the organization that I work in, and I said when I was working with the people doing the training, has anybody ever failed interview training? And they're like, what do you mean? It's more of a familiarization than anything else. I said, no. I said, having conversations, and I don't pretend to be good at it, but I do it a lot, and I'm very interested in getting better at it. And it's a whole sector in itself. The art of communication
Mhm.
is, being someone, asking open questions, being a good listener, being a good conversational partner is a massive skill set, and I don't think anybody can do it. But again, I don't think that's what we optimize for. Even in interviews where, you get someone not ideal in the organization, they could be with you for 30 years. And equally, the damage that you can do in a short interaction with someone when it's behavioral or performance based can be colossal in the ongoing relationship that the two of you have. I wanted to ask you how you think this maps onto the next generation. When we look at the next generation of people, firefighters, just general society, like they grew up differently, perhaps more protected, a bit more connected, certainly a higher focus on emotional intelligence, perhaps more often praised. How does that affect how they respond to leadership and feedback, do you think? Because we are going through a big turnover in the UK Fire and Rescue Service now, like 60% of the workforce is at that sort of retirement age within an 8-9 year period. And we're having masses of changeover. And I'm wondering if we're conscious about the changes that we need to make in leading people. And I don't pretend to have the answers, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that next generation. Because I imagine when you grew up, similar to me, our mothers and fathers were different to perhaps parenting approaches of today.
Yeah, I talk about it quite a bit with my captains, and uh, and I've had quite a bit of discussions on different podcasts on the same subject, and I have a differing view than I would say most people out there, and
Okay.
I'm excited about this next generation. I think they're going to do better than our generation, and really the the wave of thought is that it's terrible and this next generation sucks and the fire service is going to hell, and like, I mean,
Okay.
you listen to it, like, that's the sentiment, and I think we have a massive opportunity to have a even better fire service. Uh, the issue is that we're trying to use the same value set
Mhm.
that we grew up with, and stuff that in this new generational box, that's why, you know, the millennials, us
Mhm.
are having such a massive problem with this new generation, is they're not leading it correctly.
I
And
think we were raised on tough love, hierarchy, maybe a bit more physical punishment. I'm not saying abuse, but just a
yeah,
bit more fear based. Certainly with parenting style that I received was a bit more fear based and um, very, very non negotiable. Never had many conversations with my dad when I was younger. Wouldn't see him
mm,
much. He was always at work, and there was a
mm,
great deal of praise for him for
yeah,
doing that.
yeah,
Um, and for better or worse, it's certainly changed. Even the way I raise my daughter has changed. But
mhm,
also my dad wasn't a firefighter, so like I'm off during the days a lot, so I take my daughter to school and bring her home, and I spend time with her after school. Doesn't make me any better at all as a father, but it's definitely different for her. So she
yeah.
experiences more of me than perhaps I did of my parents.
Yeah, I would say that, you hit the nail on the head, and that's the family dynamic, and why I say we have an even better opportunity now than we've ever had in the fire service, and
Mhm.
that is, um, for the most part, children that were raised in the late '70s, all through the '80s and some of the '90s, they're what we call latchkey kids. Latchkey
Fuck
kids,
yeah.
yeah, are you having that type of childhood compared to the childhood that most of this Generation X and Generation Y have. Um, those are two worlds apart. And and when you're a latchkey kid, you typically don't have the same family value set
Mhm.
as this new generation does. And so that's why I say it's an opportunity for us because, you know, it's one of those cliche things. Hey, we're a brotherhood, we're a sisterhood. Well,
Mhm.
if we actually attack the firehouse in that manner, where it's truly we're trying to develop family type teams, and that's why I push it so hard in the book. Um, this next generation will love the fire service. But if we're going
Mm.
to be as sterile as the fire service that we grew up in, where it
Mm.
was called brotherhood, but really, I mean, it was still militaristic style leadership in firehouses,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
based on how those people were raised and how they came up in the fire service.
Mhm.
Uh, it actually worked for our generation, and the reason why is because we grew up very independent and resilient, um, because we were forced to, because basically
Mhm.
our parents were both working till whatever, 6,
Mhm.
7, 8 o'clock at night, and
Mhm.
we were just on our own, running the
Yep.
streets, doing
Yeah.
our thing.
Well,
Um,
some days I wasn't actually, you say a latchkey kid, I wasn't allowed to go back to the house because I took some friends back once. So I wasn't even given a key. It
yeah,
was like,
you were the
stay
extreme
out
version
until
of
you come
latchkey.
back and you see
Yeah,
one of the vehicles on the drive, then you can come inside. Because I also lost one of my keys. So my dad changed the locks and he said, yeah, I'm in a fucking key because you fucking idiot. So it was just
yeah, yeah,
like there was I don't like I wasn't eating scraps, but there was food in the garage, not like crap food. I wasn't, I was fed very well as a child. But like there was cans of Coke and there was fruit and stuff. If I was desperately
yeah,
gonna die, there's bags of crisps and stuff that I could like get my hands on, but I'd be fucking fine until tea. But I was like, no, you're not going to the house, you're just gonna break stuff.
yeah.
Don't you leave doors and windows open, you can't be trusted.
And honestly, like, I have no problem with that type of parenting. I mean, that's just me, like,
Yeah.
I think that type of stuff is great. Obviously, there's a point to some stuff, but, like,
Yeah.
that
But isn't
stuff
it mad though?
works.
You didn't have a phone. So
Yeah,
like now you want to switch your kids, WhatsApp share location, Google, iPhone
yeah,
location, whatever. I would be out for 14 hours on a
mhm,
Sunday. You had no idea where I was.
yeah,
You cared,
right,
but like it is just so hard to wrap your head back around it, even though you were there. It's like, well, what if I needed my dad? What if like, I fell off the bike and smashed my head open or whatever, which I did fall off bikes and roofs every now and again. But you kind of just got on with it. There was kind of an adult around. You could knock on a door and someone would be there, or
yep,
you could charge back phone call. You could like, I forget even what the number was, but you could like, receive call charge on the phone if I needed to ring my dad at work or something like that, or my mom. And you
yeah,
did, like you said, you just developed. I think it's a problem. We praise the word resiliency. You built a lot of resiliency, and that's not inherently to say that the next generation are less resilient, but it is a totally different human that comes out the end of it.
yeah, definitely a different human, uh, and I think that's where, um, we needed to develop certain values and,
Mhm.
the leaders before us needed to develop certain, values that we were missing, um,
Mhm.
and so to me, I don't think it's any different is they're coming in with, a different set of values, but values needed, nonetheless, and us as leaders are going to develop certain values that they're gonna be missing in their childhood, and one of those things is maybe resilience or
Mhm.
grit is another way people put it, and so
Angela Duckworth's grit.
yeah, exactly, and there's a lot to be said about that because that turns into emotional intelligence and social intelligence and those worlds combining to create grit, but, yeah, I think, the opportunity is there. It's not a
Yeah.
bridge too far. I think
No,
it's
no,
an even
no.
better opportunity because of how the fire service is supposed to be set up.
Do you think there's a better way to embrace that curiosity as well? Because I think we were more used to blind obedience without asking any questions. Just fucking do it. Question was a smack round the back of the head. Um, we praise curiosity, but why do we misinterpret it? If I'm questioning your decision as a leader, why is that not romanticized as curiosity or interest versus why are you questioning authority? Why are you being a problem maker? Why can't you just do as you're told? What is your problem? Do you know what I mean? Like, you, as a leader, I feel like you need to be more willing to talk about, the Simon Sinek analogy of going into the why, not just the what and the how. You've got to be more willing to express the purpose, the meaning, the direction. And again, it all falls into that communication. Blind obedience, I don't know if it was ever net positive. I imagine, army and military is, sometimes you might need a lot more blind obedience. But that's, again, I think, a generational thing. People are far more curious or confident to question direction these days.
Yeah, so I'm probably the worst person to ask on that because I've never been the blind obedience person. Um, uh,
But
I
as a
could
child,
say,
did that not make you a problem maker? Not
yeah,
piss people off?
yeah, I guess it wasn't. I think, well, that goes into your answer to your question, at least in my opinion, is it's all about intent. There are those that want to question everything for the sake of questioning everything. It's just their personality, and I don't think there's a lot of net positive there.
Okay.
Or questioning something just because you're an authority figure, and so they already have a distrust in anything you're going to say. There's not a net positive out of that.
Mhm.
That's actually divisive. The problem is that you'll have leaders that will they'll throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that is
Mhm.
you'll have a mass majority of people that are just questioning it because they're not going to have blind allegiance, and they want to know the
Yeah.
why, right? Like that Simon Sinek's, start with why type of situation. And so those are the people that you need to ensure that you're capturing, right? And allowing them to go through this mental process in order to follow this order, which is great. And I encourage that stuff. I love it because I don't truly believe I have the answers for stuff.
Mhm.
Here's here's the I think the fine line, Pete, is you'll ask people, right? Like, hey, what's the answer to X, Y, and Z? And
Mhm.
they won't have an answer for you. And then you give them like, you'll have an answer in the back of your head. Like, because when there's a vacuum in leadership and decision making, guess what needs to happen? You need to fill that. And so, like, we don't know, or I don't have an answer, isn't the answer for moving forward. So,
Mhm.
even with empowering people of like, hey, what's your opinion? What can we do next? Yada, yada. They'll either give like a bad answer or not have a good one at all. And so therefore you need to fill in that blank. And what I've found out with it is that as soon as you fill the blank, that's when you find out, like, okay, here's all these personalities. People are just going to resist it because you said it. They haven't thought
Mhm.
through anything at all. It's just an immediate no. That's their personality. People that
Mhm.
have genuine curiosity about it, and then people that will take what you given and want to improve it. And so you're
Mhm.
navigating all of those different minefields as soon as you put an answer out there. And so this kind of goes into something different, but like what I've seen in the leadership circles is this word empowerment, and it's the fix all. But the problem is leaders don't even know how to empower people. They think just giving people the an ability to make decisions and
Mhm.
and have that power actually fixes problems when actually it creates more problems.
Mhm.
Because all you did was put them in your role and you're just going to watch them fail. Like
Mhm.
that doesn't work, right? Like, especially when
Yeah.
you need to, there's execution that needs to happen. You can't always just sit there and watch people fail.
Mhm.
Uh, or
Call it a growth
knowingly
opportunity.
set people up for failure just because you're like, well, this is how they learn, like this is
Uh,
good for their motivation. Like, you have to navigate all that as a leader. Just saying like empower people is not this like magic pill that everyone thinks. There's a lot of
looks good on a
nuance.
poster, though.
What's that?
Looks good on a poster, though.
It's total t-shirt quotes, and it's so
Yeah.
frustrating. Because you need to empower people. That's why I talk about, once again, in the book, there's the 5 W's I call, like, who, what, where, why, when. Like, you need to ask yourself all those different questions when you're empowering someone, like, who should you be empowering for this situation? When should they be empowered? Like, meaning like, hey, if they're a
Mhm.
brand new firefighter, I probably shouldn't empower this person to take over the rescue program for the department. Like, that's a win, like,
Yeah.
and so like, I don't know. I just feel like we do this t-shirt quote leadership
Mhm.
thing, and then we actually don't give people how to empower,
I
and there's
forget what the model is. I might have to try and Google it in a minute, but I read one the other day and it was like a really good equation around like if you give people empowerment, but you do so without skill set or resources, you create anxiety. And it was like an equation. Do you know what I mean? If you give people empowerment without direction, it creates confusion. Do you know what I mean? And there's this like you're just using that empowerment as the cure all. If that's not resting on some foundational elements of clear vision, skill set, resources, capacity,
yes,
willing,
yes,
then you're just building the house on sand. And you go, look, you're really pissed off, Johnny. I'll tell you what, I'm going to empower you with to fix this one because it feels like a cop out when they just go, oh shit, shit, shit. You're not doing it. You're not doing it. You're not doing it. You just empowering them with autonomy isn't going to fix it because you're setting them up for. I've not. Well, hang on a minute. I've not been through your training. I've not had these skills. I don't know what to do with these resources. I don't even understand the vision that's in your head. It's just the math ain't mathing, and you're going to go, okay, you do it. That's just creates confusion, resentment, anxiety. Do you know what I mean? And then, oh, I'm going to lift it back off your shoulders now and go, see, I told you it was fucking hard. And
yep,
you go, I'm not even sure what I learned there. Other than now you also sabotaged me as a leader. So you just wanted me to look a twat in front of everybody else. That's what just happened there. That's all I learned from that experience. Do you know what I
absolutely
mean?
nailed it,
It's not like failing
nailed it.
safely as you would do to your child in a whatever, let's do some baking today. You take control of weighing out the flour or whatever. Do you know what I mean? You're not giving somebody an opportunity to fail safely and learn. This is not a development stage. This is you trying to embarrass them because you're just frustrated and you're frustrated at their frustration. Do you know what I mean?
Yep, yeah, and
How do
so
you
go
go on?
ahead.
Sorry.
Well,
No,
I
no,
was gonna
please.
say there's a flip side to that too of, um, and something that I've just had to learn the hard way on just how people think and how people react to situations, and that is knowing that the best situation is to make the decision and see it through and manage, um, from point A to point Z on whatever scenario you're going through. um, People will look at that as micromanagement. Um, and it's something that I've had to, because once again, it's misinformation. Especially with this younger generation, um, anything that looks like management is now the cop out as micromanagement. And really, what you're truly doing is you're being a good manager, meaning you're ensuring that what is supposed to be happening is happening. Now,
Well, you're trying to be a good coach. I have this sometimes, and it's like I'm playing fucking word game salad with some of the managers that I have working for me
mhm,
because I'm like, I want us to work together to coach through this, and I have had the accusation put back at me only recently, actually, of I feel like you're micromanaging me, and
mhm,
I heard someone else who was mentoring me actually refer to it as the long screwdriver. They said, reaching down 4 levels to turn the screw yourself. Don't be that person. I'm like, yes, but like we spoke about earlier, with such turnover in the fire and rescue service, with such new managers, they've been in 2 or 3 years as a firefighter and they're moving up into management leadership levels. Now, that is what it is, and it's not going to change because people are leaving so fast. Someone's got to move up. Someone has to move up. So the fact that you think they're not ready or whatever, that's a privilege of size. If you're in a department that's got 7,000 people in it, then maybe you've got more capacity for training and rotation and exposure. If you're just in a smaller organization, well, 10 of there's 10 people here and the 11th person's just moved on. So the fact that between the lot of you, you've got between 1 and 4 years of experience, somebody's going to step up. So I think we have to do a lot of that coaching because when these people step up in my organization, they just do a level one command assessment, and they do a couple of little, they run a drill outside, and people will assess them running a drill, see if they've got command presence and stuff like that. And that's basically it. But they don't train them on development programs or even some of a lot of the management stuff. They don't train them in the management stuff sometimes, which I know management isn't leadership, but they don't train them in some of the management stuff. So when you ask them to set up a training exercise, and you're like, right, well, just remember, we need to set a briefing date, and we need to do a task-based risk assessment, and we do need to get this stuff submitted, and I thought you said you were going to let me do it, Johnny. I am letting you do it, but you've never fucking done it before. So
Exactly.
I'm shit at that. I think I'm struggling to coach some people. And again, everybody's different. Some people are receptive to it. Some people aren't receptive to my way of doing it. But I also appreciate getting into a personal coaching conversation again. Sorry, I've hijacked our conversation. But I'm a bit too fast, bang, 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 bang. My excitement and enthusiasm can come across very forceful at times.
Yeah, we're
struggle
living
with that.
parallel lives, Pete, for sure.
Okay. Good.
No, we are.
Yeah.
I'll give you
The people go to you, Johnny, this is not a fucking seminar. This is a one-to-one meeting at work. All right. Get off your fucking seminar box. All right.
right. A small example is so when I got promoted to assistant chief, I was given a group of very young captains. And so when it came to, we were implementing new SOGs for, tactical type stuff, right? Just true operational things, SOPs.
Yep.
And I was very much in the weeds on that training. And so the firefighters themselves, they looked at it as micromanagement, and I could see why, right? And so what I tried to explain to people, to no avail, it didn't matter how much I explained it, was I need to trust my captains. And in heart, they're correct, right? However, having young captains and brand new SOPs, those two worlds colliding, creates it to where we can create some long-term dysfunction in our organization because they're not all teaching it the same way. They're not all the best instructors. They may be learning it days prior to them even teaching it. And so yeah, I was very much into the weeds on that, and it created a lot of animosity because, they got an assistant chief at, firefighter training and putting his 2 cents in on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so how I
That's
tried to
remarkably
solve it
hard.
was, doing individual training with all of the captains. And really what that did was show me like, oh man, they're not even ready to train this stuff, but this stuff is coming out now in the organization. So the ball's already moving. So I can't just like stop it. And so you wind up, micromanaging. And I think it's become this term like it's a plight like on you and your ability to lead. But sometimes it's actually necessary, and that is, micromanaging isn't what you should be doing all the time, but because they put this negative sentiment on it, like it should never be done. I don't agree with that.
It's like they raise a red flag that you've then got to back off from. You're micromanaging. Oh, right. Fucking hell. Okay. Right. Okay. You're going to do that. And then I don't want to perpetuate that belief. And all I can
Right.
think to do is back off. But like when you think about those learning cycles or those competency cycles, like so many people, and myself included, if I were to move to another level now, I would be sat in that unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know. You look at that
Yep.
Yahari's window. I don't fucking know. I
Right.
did this when I moved into training school a number of years ago as an instructor, and I was so passionate and romantic about firefighting, hence why I wanted to go into training school. But I was trying to teach it my way, and there's people that go, "Okay, Pete, yeah, some of what you've got is good. Some of what you've got, honestly, is completely fucking wrong, and that's okay because you're just doing what you were trained to do 20 years ago, and you don't know that this new science has come out and the new techniques and the new behaviors. Also, there's an argument for standardization. So yes, Johnny does do it differently to you, and I appreciate you're using this oh, but some students relate to different instructors differently. Yes, absolutely, they do, Pete. But there's flexibility in your approach, and then there's different fucking teaching altogether.
Mm.
Like, you are doing something different. You can't just keep chopping and changing the day around and missing bits out that you think aren't relevant and turning a 20-minute presentation into a 3-hour one on fire behavior just because you're more passionate about that subject. That's, you've almost got to keep guardrails on autonomy. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Otherwise, you end up, someone's gone way off left field. And, dependent on the project, dependent on the task, dependent on, the right procedures, long term consequences. We disseminate this to 20, 30, 40, 50 stations. Fucking hell. To have to recycle that back and go, we made a change. Oh, it's never going to fucking happen. And that just goes, people go, they got no idea what they're doing. Fucking
Yeah.
leadership's rubbish. Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So you do need to punch those brakes without making that person feel suffocated or like you're removing their responsibility, control, empowerment, whatever we want to call it.
I could totally relate. The example, so we use NFPA drills, like NFPA 1410 drills,
Yep.
monthly to just see where we're at as a department, standardized approach to our effectiveness on the fire ground. And whenever we do those drills, we like to see it done, all of the individual skill sets within the drills done according to the SOPs. And the reason being is um, it's the only way we can standardize this approach to these drills.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, going back to the micromanaging part, and I'm glad you brought this up, is it was something, it was just a blind side to me. And that was like, hey, like, for example, like if we're throwing ladders, we want to see a clove hitch. Is there other ways to tie off a ladder?
Yeah.
Absolutely. If we are
I
pulling
don't
up,
care what you learnt on the rope rescue course. Do the fucking clove hitch because that's what it
right.
says.
But here's the problem is like, hey, the firemen, they look at it as like, hey, it's just as effective if I do the bang or not, right? And like, oh, I do the bang or
Yeah.
not, does it matter? Like it's there, it's done.
All it really means
What
is
you're
you're asking
doing
me to
is
tie a
you're
secure and not.
micromanaging how
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
um getting the job done. And so those those are the things that there's just some misinformation about, and especially, and you just nailed it, it's, when you're trying to take a standardized approach to training for, so you can have an objective way to measure that training.
Yeah.
The conversation was, hey, when it comes to the fire ground, you're right, I don't care how you get it done as long as you get it done safely and effectively. And that's going to be between you and your captains, like,
Yeah.
and you guys working as a team. You guys work that out together. When you do your
Right.
training together, good to go. However, when
And
it
by the
comes to
way, in 6
drill,
months, if you genuinely come up with a better way to do it, please feed that back into the organization. But for
yeah,
now, we need to use this as an agreed yardstick.
exactly. And so getting firefighters to have that mental switch and not think it's micromanagement, even on the drill ground, was
Yeah.
just once again just tripwire for me, that of like, man, didn't see that one coming.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing is like y- y- you can get caught coming or going, because if you don't have a standard and everyone's just doing their own thing, well, guess what firemen are going to complain about? Like, well, why don't we have a standard on this? Everyone's doing their own thing. So it's like,
Mm. And also,
you're a
it's really
micromanager for
confusing for the
having a
rookie.
standard. You're a
Yeah.
terrible manager for not having a standard. So
The rookie needs consistency as well, the new recruit, because when you're picking a mentor on a watch, oh, I want to pick one of the best firefighters, but I want to pick someone that's going to start with the fundamentals of the way that it says in the SOPs. And you almost got to guard them a little bit against the genuinely great firefighter on Red Watch, who is a great firefighter, great problem solver, and they've got 27 different ways to do this one because every incident is depends. It's like, well, do we throw a ladder this way? Do we drag a line this way? Well, depends. Yeah, but they're not ready for the depends. They need to just have the scaffolding first. Just give them the framework, then build all the Gucci fucking spinning lights and get arounds and shortcuts and alterations. but they need to do that to start with. Because I see that we do like a round robin rotation sometimes with recruits where usually they try and do 6 months. So they do 6 months at one station, 6 months at another, depending on how many people we take on, length of intake. We might do about 12 months. I have seen some at shorter because the organizational needs will need to change someone at 3 months or something like that.
Mhm.
And that can be quite disorientating for them. I think there's a benefit to it in that you'll get a diverse interpretation of leadership and standards, and there's different vehicles, different specials on different stations and stuff like that. But you do get cycles of, especially if someone goes out to the arse end of nowhere station in the sticks, where people haven't done training for a long time and they've not had a recruit in a long time either, and they don't know half the shit because they've not been back to training in ages either. So when the
Yep.
recruit comes and go, oh, we're just doing this latest NFPA drill, or they go, oh, well, the latest research around extrication and the exit project says ABC and X, and they're like, well, I don't know what training they're teaching you now, but I'll show you what we're going to do. And then that person fails their 12-month assessment because you've taught them loads of get arounds, which are probably good, but that's not where they're at. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean?
No, you
And I
nailed
think
them on
about
the
that with
head.
all levels of leaders. You can't you stepping into a brand new management position and you're comparing someone at step 67 to you at step 4. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, I don't see that manager doing. Well, you might not see it outwardly, but I promise you, they have done all these 27 steps. They've just pushed it into the subconscious because it's become
Yeah.
second nature to them. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah, yeah.
mean?
Yeah, like tying
Um,
your shoe, you don't think about it.
I don't think about it. You become unconsciously competent, as they would refer to in that. I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you because it's something that's very specific to the UK at the minute. We're having some massive leadership problems, in my words, and some people might hear this and go, "Steady on, Pete, you're catastrophizing." There's been some genuinely There's been some illegal stuff in a number of services. There's been some fraudulent stuff. There's been a wide variety of lies, people pretending to have been at certain incidents and putting it in CVs, people pretending to have certain qualifications, found out they didn't have them. Some bad stuff. Firefighters can be very cynical by default. They're observant. They've seen promises about well-being, culture, development, and it just never reaches the watch floor. It just never reaches the station. So pretending that the trust issue doesn't exist just kind of deepens it. When you speak to a new senior leader in post, maybe they've moved from another organization, and they're like, "What do you mean? Just turn up and let's all just be nice to each other." And we're like, "Yeah, I get that, mate, but you're unknowingly got to apologize for the skeletons of the past." So how senior officers can often rotate before culture change sticks. Well, every time I have a chief fire officer on the podcast, they say the first question they get asked when they move into role is, "When are you going?" Because they usually only stay in for 2 or 3 years. They move up to get a pension uplift before retirement. A lot of them are doing it towards the latter end of their career, and there can be that change fatigue. So that big, long, convoluted question, whilst you're trying to work out what the hell I'm even asking, is how do we build a bit more trust in those that are empowered to look after us, to guide us, to source resources and funding, and are writing the policies in which we will be cared for long term? Because I think we're really struggling with that at the minute.
Yeah. Um, I th I think twofold on that. One
Okay.
is it, we can make it to where it's a very simplistic answer. And to me, the simplistic answer is, um, when you are trying to build trust, it is micro interactions.
Okay.
Like, for example, like if you were to ask anyone why they thought this XYZ Mr. Smith was a great
Yeah.
leader, they would start telling you micro interactions. Oh, well,
They'll
this
tell
one
you a
time,
story.
yeah, it'll
Yeah.
tell you, and it'll be like the smallest little interactions. Well, this one time, I didn't have food and he came by
Hmm.
and brought me McDonald's. Like, I don't know,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
it's that type of stuff.
Mhm.
And so what I call it is trust building opportunities. And you as a leader always need to be you need to be like a scout for trust building opportunities, because they're all like they're there,
Mhm.
but they're fleeting, and you have to find those things and build those trust building opportunities, and or capitalize on those trust building opportunities in the smallest details,
Mm.
because that's what people are going to remember is
And it
those
often
people.
helps if it's something you are not professionally obligated to do.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? The thing you could have easily missed or walked past, and no one would have called you out on it, but you had to. It appeared that you had to make a specific effort to go out of your way to do something that was going to add no value to you, but you could see that I would have appreciated.
I would say that's one example, right?
Okay.
That's one example of building those opportunities. Another one would be simply um, remembering their kids' names, right? Like, you don't have a lot of interaction with this person, but maybe they work in a different battalion. You're not even a supervisor, but when you come by and you remember a story from a year ago, and maybe it was little Timmy was having ankle surgery, and you're like, hey, I haven't seen you in a little bit. How's little Timmy doing? That's impactful. That little micro interaction builds trust. And
Sounds like fake, but I actually cheat code that because I do write it down in my phone because it sounds inauthentic or whatever. But like, there's a whole Dunbar's number about how many people you can remember and how many people you can remember their faces versus their names versus their kids' names. I just write stuff down. I don't trust my memory because I do care. Ergo, I've written it down, but I know I will forget stuff, unfortunately. So I write down the names of people's children and stuff like that because I just forget it. And I do want to remember it because I want to ask them how that trip went. I want to ask them how the house move is going. I want to ask them, how the kids' tournament was. But I will forget. And, I like
yeah,
to write those things down because it just forces me well, it helps me, perpetuate a value that I know to hold. So I make it a priority to make those notes because it's important to that person, isn't it?
well, it can be fake, for sure. And but the thing is like, uh, people are intuitive. They're gonna know if you're being fake about it,
Mm,
um, most of the time. Like, yeah, can you manipulate and trick people or whatever? Um, but what we're really talking about is genuine care, right? Like, if people can see that you genuinely care about them, it builds trust. But it's typically not the big things. The big things are hard to come by, and they may never come. But what does come around very often are these micro interactions. And it's in those micro interactions, if you can be authentic and genuinely care about people's well-being and their family and their lives, then people organically build trust with you. I mean, that's just because we're social creatures. And so,
mm,
yeah, so when we talk about trust, that's the simplest answer to that. Building trust with people is genuinely caring about people through micro interactions. Now, as far as the bigger question of healing the UK fire service, uh, I think it's another. It's this is a here. It's this is the easy button, but it's hard to do, and
yeah.
that is the central theme is worry about your team. Um,
Hmm.
and that is, if the captain worries just about his engine company or her truck company, right? And that is your entire world, and you're going to build that team. And then the battalion chief that is over all of those captains just worries about their captains, and that is their entire
Hmm.
world. And then the division chief worries about his battalion chiefs, and that is that person's entire world.
Yeah.
You literally start to heal the fire service because you can handle the 4 or 5 people um,
Hmm.
that you're with. And what happens is, because you're setting an example of those, it's like trickle down economics, right? Like, eventually all of that bleeds down to the firefighter level, the people that are actually
Yeah.
doing the work. Um, and so if they can trust the captain and live in this bubble, they don't even care about what the fire chief is doing.
Hmm.
And that was one of my main things is that message to my firefighters when I was a captain was, hey, I want you guys to understand that's jazz music. We're in control of our world right here. Don't
Yeah.
even worry about them. Let's worry about us and how we're going to get through the day, and us having job satisfaction, meaning when we show up, we're excited to come work with each other every day. That we're
Mhm.
excited to do
Mhm.
this job,
Mhm. Mhm.
that we're going to do the job really well. So that makes us even want to train harder because we can't wait to do it even better and harder on the next call. And so, like,
Mate.
if you can bring people into their own little world like that, and
Mhm.
and do that in a family type environment, but then do that at every level of the organization, you build something special.
Uh,
And so, yeah, that's the simple answer.
that is, I mean, that shows up everywhere. Do you know what I mean? And there's like it's in religious philosophy, and how do I change the world? God, and He gives you control just over yourself. It's that control of yourself. Sphere of control, sphere of influence. We catastrophize about the macro, and then we check out on the micro. Do you know what I mean?
Yep,
I say to my firefighters, look, we got 12 hours here today and the shifts that I work. We've got some non-negotiables. There's a few things we need to do. We've got our checks. We've got a visit. We've got a training session, whatever. But when do you want to have lunch? What time do you want to go to the gym? What do we want to listen to? What do we want to do? We have got a remarkably wide sphere of control, depending on how you frame it. Do you know what I mean? But if you want to catastrophize about the thing happening at the senior leadership table, but we also do it in public life. We like to talk about Ukraine and the plight of, sexism in Uganda or something like that. And I'm like, my heart goes out to them. And I give money to the Firefighters charity and to one of the charity as well that's around animal rescue. You can't pour from an empty cup, and strength starts at home. So my priorities, my missus, my daughter, my team at work. Do you know what I mean? We can
yep,
send emails and we can make advisories to policy changes, and we can sign a petition for national pay. But that's going to make fuck all difference in the here and now, right here. And you've got all the control over this. You've got
yep,
so much control over how we show up and interact with each other today, because you move to a different station, same policies, same pay, same kit. The only thing that's different are the people and the way that we treat each other every day. That is literally it. That is
yep.
literally it. The pay is the same, the uniform's the same, the badge is the same, the truck's the same, the policy's the same, the pay is the same. Okay, it really is us. If me and Johnny are having a shit conversation, we've got to take at least 50% responsibility. I might have to take a little bit more because I keep interrupting him. But it's like
No,
there's an
you're good.
element
I
of
love it.
this where we've got to take responsibility for that. I want to be respectful of your time, because talking about priorities as well. My daughter wraps it up, comes home from school in a short period of time. We're going to direct people straight after this. They can go over to forgingteams.com. Is there any closing thoughts that we want to, and people won't remember or people won't know? We've been trying to put this conversation together for 6 months. So I'll use that analogy, probably longer, to place onto things of, look, if it's a no, it might just mean it's a no right now. It doesn't mean it's a no forever. And just because something, you don't hit it out of the park the first time, have a bit of appreciation and understanding for each other. Everybody's human. You've shown great patience with me, and we've replanned this, and we've got it there eventually. And just to say to people, look, it's all up and down. No one's perfect. We're all walking bin fires. But if we're showing up, trying to be as kind and compassionate as we can, then I think there's a lot to be said for the humanizing elements that we've spoken about today. Is there anything you want to leave in the mind of the listener, brother, or where's the best place to go for them to find out a little bit more about the work that you do?
Yeah, as far as something that and it's the central theme of what we've been talking about today. If there's something that I want the listener to remember, is just the team, the team, the team. Um Everything else, when it comes to leadership, is just background noise. Just whoever you're in charge of, whatever team, and even if you're like just a firefighter listening to this podcast, um, you have, especially if you're listening to this podcast, I can already tell you you're an informal leader, because just people aren't absorbing these type of podcasts without
No.
having that in them. And so um, I would say, you want to heal your department. Say there's a lot of things going wrong, or you just want to show up to work every day and enjoy work. The
Mhm.
answer's simple, and that is build a team, and it'll be the most magical time that you've had in your career. It will be. You'll remember that moment in time where you were on an actual team. I'm not talking about like a group of people just happen to be on the same engine. I'm talking
Mhm.
about what a team truly is. If you
Mm.
build a team, it is something special, and um, that's where all the healing takes place for your career, for the organization. So just focus on that. There is ways to do that. It's a skill set. So um, please go to www.forgingteams.com, or you can find my book on Amazon, Forging Your Team, and learn some of those skill sets. But at the end of the day, it's just like throwing a ladder, right? Like I can read a manual on how to throw a ladder, just like you can read a manual on leadership. It's about getting out there and practicing, failing fast, failing often, and having fun with it. And so I provide you the manual, but really it's up to you on um, incubating that skill set and perfecting it.
Mate, strong recommendation. Don't worry about remembering the links, people. Just scroll down right now. You literally got 30 seconds left in this podcast. Click just below this. You will see the links. Johnny, I appreciate you, brother, and I hope to speak to you again in the future.
Thank you, Pete.